I submit a theory to you. There are ultimately three versions of reality when it comes to who you are. There are three perspectives. First, there's the perspective of how you see yourself and making an assumption that that's how everyone sees you. That's typically not the case. There's also the second concept, which is how you think other people perceive you. And then lastly, there is how other people actually perceive you. So just in review already, how you perceive yourself, how you think others perceive you, and how others actually perceive you. That's reality, knowing that, accepting that as truth. But the responsibility falls on you to understand and accept that by default, most people assume the second, which is how they assume other people think about themselves, is how people actually perceive that person. I'll give you an example. And obviously I'm speaking from experience. That's how I can make this video. I've lived through this over the years, and I feel this year, turning 38, this is kind of one of the major revelations I've had. But it's like this. On my phone, I have the Facebook Messenger app or whatever it is. It sends me updates. Here's what you were doing 5 years ago. Because I don't actually scroll Facebook, but I still have it on my phone, so it just shows me whatever I was doing 5 years ago. And I see myself 5 years ago. Well, that was a couple months into me becoming vegan. And so I had never been thinner in my life. I'd never been more trim and all that thing. So my ideal body weight I finally was. And that was great for that year while that lasted, until the effects wore off. Even after I remained vegan, it didn't. Basically, my body learned how to metabolize food in a way that still went back to normally storing fat as it did before I became a vegan. So I think back, I look at those pictures and I think, man, that was the best I ever looked. And here's where we get into this concept of assuming that other people perceive me in the same way they actually do. Because in my mind, and I think all of us do this to some degree, we think, well, here's my ideal goal, here's who I wish I was, here's the version of me that I wish I could be. But since I'm not that, therefore people won't perceive me that way, and therefore I'm not the thing that I want to be. The funny thing is, though, I can tell you in my point in life I am right now, if right now I went back to weighing actually under 160 pounds, back to that ideal level of fitness. Because for me, I don't mind aging, I don't mind looking older, but what I don't want is to be out of shape, because I feel for me that that's something of my life I can control. To some large degree I can control preventing diabetes, obesity, cancer diseases. To a large degree, we do have control over that. A lot of people just resign, there's some people that are healthy and then they still get sick. True, but still, if I have some control over it, then I'm going to do that. And for me, a sign of doing that is being fit and being healthy and being a certain size. And for me, ideally, under 160. Even as I say this, you're probably thinking, who cares? I wouldn't like you any more or less if you weighed that amount. That's my point. That's what I'm saying in this video. That's my personal example. You've got your own. You have your own thing to put in the category of, if I was only more, and then fill in the blank, whatever the thing is. You think, if only I was more of this thing, then people would like me more, respect me more, etc. That's what we do. My challenge to you, and I feel again this is the revelation of my life this year, is recognizing that we've got all these things in this category of, if only I was more, whatever the thing is, people would like me and respect me more. Largely though, whatever's in that category, completely ignored and unappreciated by the people that we think that we're trying to get to respect us or like us even more. People wouldn't like me anymore if I was this ideal weight that I was for 1 year of my life. It's funny because in high school I felt I was too thin, too skinny, too much of a rail. And then as soon as high school was over, then I didn't have the problem anymore, to the point where then I became a vegan, and in that first year I was like the perfect size, but then even that went away. So I shouldn't spend any time thinking about, man, if only I could get back to 160 pounds. Nobody cares. And as much as you don't care about that, imagine whatever your category is of the thing, if only I was more, the thing that you think about yourself. Turns out, I would imagine no one else would care if you were to become that thing that you think. In fact, what's funny is, if anything, I was a much less likable person 5 years ago when I was this perceived ideal level of fitness. Because, that was 5 years ago, I wasn't in the level of emotional intelligence I am now, to where I remember when I became a vegan, I was, and again, this is part of the reason I'm not on Facebook anymore, really saying anything, because when I first became a vegan, I made some posts, basically kind of like making fun of everybody for drinking milk and eating eggs, and posted a picture of this guy like under a cow's udder, like, aw. And so that must have been weird for the first guy who'd made that discovery. The things, it's like 5 years ago, the version of myself was, oh, I can try to change people's minds. But see, again, and I made a video about this recently, is that we think that if we can basically prove someone wrong, then we can gain a person's respect. And I say you cannot do that. Ultimately, there's a way of teaching versus trying to be snarky and sarcastic and get someone to, it doesn't actually work that way. But ultimately, if we're trying to convince people against what they already believe, I think that's a reflection of us, ourselves. Something's not quite fulfilled in our own life. So I can tell you 5 years later, I'm at the point, and hopefully if you've been watching my videos, you know how I am now. I'm like, my catchphrase is, hi, I don't care, thanks. I mean, that's so different than who I was 5 years ago. I feel that I'm a much more likable person now, even though I'm not that perceived ideal level of fitness. So what I'm submitting to you is, maybe even if you were those things, you might even become less likable. I was less likable 5 years ago. What I've learned is the thing that makes me a more likable person is that I'm not trying to prove people wrong. I'm not trying to be right all the time. And I'm recognizing that to be liked, to be well received, to be respected, has a lot more to do with you being humble. Humility, if that's who you are, it's going to be hard to be the person who's trying to debate people and prove them wrong. I mean, it's good you know what you believe, but to try to prove people wrong to get the respect, that's what a waste of time. That's not at all who I am. And I've learned the concept of, you want people to like you? Be a likable person. Be confident, but be humble. Be a conversation starter, and then let the other person take the conversation from there. Never try to up this person's story or something like that. Just start conversations and smile and be confident in yourself, or at least act like you are, but in a humble way. It's funny, it's really that simple. But it's hard for a lot of people to get there because they're caught in this very fundamental default trap of, yeah, but I can't be confident and likable because I'm not this thing that I want to be yet. Well, I'm making a 10-minute video about that very concept. You're probably wasting your time trying to become this thing. Even if you became it, people would not appreciate it or even acknowledge it. It'd be ignored. It would be lost on them. And if anything, you might even struggle like what I did when I first, for that year, became that ideal body weight of level of fitness, was that then I gained like this conceitedness actually. I became very focused on myself and to some degree thought, well, I am better than other people. I figured this thing out, and if only people would become vegan, then they could become the perfect ideal weight too, and their health problems would go away. Because I did have diacidrotic eczema, and it went away after I became a vegan, and I still don't have it. But now I'm not here to tell people how to live their lives or what to eat. I'm People just do whatever they want to do. We have this false concept that our beliefs actually matter. Usually our beliefs don't matter to anybody other than ourselves. And that's good that we have our beliefs. That's for another video. There you go. There's three versions of reality. The version of who we think we are, or who we want to be, the way we perceive ourselves. Then there's the concept of how we want people to perceive us, or at least think how we think people perceive us. And then lastly, there is the concept of how people actually perceive us. It's a matter of getting in touch with that reality instead of being focused on how we think they see us, or even how we want them to see us. There's reality. And for me, the older I get, the more this becomes a natural thought process. Your comments belong right here.